As Jesus was walking along, he saw a man who had been blind from birth.
Rabbi,
His disciples asked him,
why was this man born blind? Was it because of his own sins or his parents' sins?
It was not because of his sins or his parents' sins.
Jesus answered,
This happened so the power of God could be seen in him. We must quickly carry out the tasks assigned to us by the one who sent us. The night is coming, and then no one can work. But while I am here in the world, I am the light of the world.
Then he spat on the ground, made mud with the saliva, and spread the mud over the blind man's eyes. He told him,
Go wash yourself in the pool of Siloam.
Shalom means sent. So the man went and washed and came back seeing. His neighbours and others who knew him as a blind beggar asked each other,
A man who used to sit and beg.
Yeah, isn't this the man who used to sit and beg?
Some said he was, and others said,
No, just looks like him.
but the beggar kept saying,
Yes, I am the same one.
They asked,
Who healed you? What happened?
He told them,
The man they called Jesus made mud and spread it over my eyes and told me, go to the pool of Siloam and wash yourself. So I went and washed, and now I can see.
Where is he now?
They asked.
I don't know.
He replied.
All right, brilliant reading. Thank you ever so much. They ask him some difficult questions. Why is this man being born blind? Was it his own fault? Did he actually sin before he was even born? Was it his parents' fault? And as we'll find out later on, the Pharisees certainly think that this man, it's his own fault, or is his parents' fault. They say that later on. And I can't think of that much worse. You've already got something horrible that's going on in your life, and then you're told it's your own fault. So the disciples want to know the answer. They think, well, what's going on here? I would have thought that most of us ask God those sorts of questions sometimes. We say, God, why is this happening to somebody? Why are they having this and then this and then this? All these different problems all happening to the same person. It seems so unfair. And it's something that we don't always get answers from God, but we do wrestle with God, some of us, most of us I would have thought, with those sorts of questions. And in this case, Jesus is very clear. He says that it wasn't this man, it wasn't his parents, it's not their fault, but actually on this occasion, it's going to give an opportunity for God's glory to be revealed in this man. So the disciples' good questions seem to actually lead to a healing for this man, a wonderful healing for this man. And maybe our questions sometimes will lead to us praying and asking Jesus for help, and other people receiving wonderful answers to prayer. Now, all the way through the Gospels, Jesus makes outrageous claims about himself. He says, here he's saying, I am the light of this world. And in other places he says, I am the resurrection and the life. I am the way, the truth and the life. And in one of the other Gospels he says, the Queen of Sheba came to see Solomon, but now one who is greater than Solomon is here. And then he's talking about himself. Now, if I was that sort of person and I said, I'm just so much greater than anybody else, I hope you would think about locking me up somewhere, because I would be really getting beyond myself, wouldn't I? It's on the level of somebody who thinks they're Napoleon or Julius Caesar. And maybe some people think, well, maybe Jesus was a bit bonkers. The trouble is that with the Pharisees, they would say, well, he might be a bit bonkers, but he's doing these amazing miracles. Does a mad person actually get the chance or the ability to do miracles like this man's doing? And then the Pharisees looked at Jesus and they thought, well, is it from God or is it from the evil one? They were thinking there's two sources of power here. And they actually said that Jesus was being empowered by the devil himself, that he was an evil man. And they said that sometimes. They said it's the power of Beelzebub that is casting out demons. Does that match up with Jesus' life and his teaching and the way he did things, the way he treated people? And then the other option is, is he exactly who he claimed to be? And that's what we believe, pretty well everybody who's logged on today onto this Zoom call, that actually Jesus is exactly who he said he was. He is the light of the worlds. He is greater than Solomon, greater than Moses. He is the way and the truth and the life. But during this story, you'll see that the other view, that Jesus is evil, that comes out very, very strongly. And I love the way that Dan wanted to be able to put spit on Josh's eyes, I think. But that was not permitted. But can you imagine? Jesus spits. Now, when we get spat on, we don't like it. I don't like it at all. I think that's a horrible thing to do. So Jesus spits onto the mud on the ground and makes a paste. And in the hands of Jesus, this spit and mud becomes a means for blessing other people. Isn't that astonishing? Some of the early church fathers, like Irenaeus, thought that this was a creative miracle, that just as God took the dust of the earth and made human beings out of it, that he was taking the dust of the earth and making a new eye for the blind man. But he can take something that's pretty vile and disgusting, and it says he anointed the man's eyes with it. Normally you anoint it with an ointment or something special, and he's anointing it with spittle and mud, and it's become something beautiful in the hands of Jesus. And I think we can see a bit of a parable there of how he takes us, and we're nothing special, are we? Let's face it. There's nothing particularly wonderful about us without Jesus in us. He takes us and he does something beautiful with us, and he does something amazing with us. And I think that's a wonderful picture. And he sends the man off to the pool of Siloam. I wonder what would have happened if that man hadn't obeyed Jesus. Would he still have been healed if he'd gone to just a little bucket nearby and washed the mud off his eyes, or gone to a different pool? We don't really know. I suspect he might well not have been healed, but he was obedient. He went and did as he was told, and a wonderful, amazing miracle happens, and he can see again. And his neighbours just can't believe it. They say, oh, maybe this isn't even the same man. Maybe it's somebody who just looks like him. Because we cannot get into our heads the idea that this man could have been healed when he was born blind. And it's such a big problem to them. They go to the experts. They go to the Pharisees. And that's the next bit of the story from verse 13 onwards. So if you are a reader, and I think I've got Ros, Josh, Debbie and Toby and Maureen for this next bit. The next bit of the story. And we're going to go down to verse 34 where he's thrown out by the Pharisees. So it's quite a long section, this one.
Then they took the man who had been blind to the Pharisees, because it was on the Sabbath that Jesus had made the mad and healed him. The Pharisees asked the man all about it. So he told them,
He put the mud over my eyes, and
when I washed them, I could see.
Some of the Pharisees said,
This man, Jesus, is not from God, for he is working on the Sabbath.
others said,
But how could an ordinary sinner do such miraculous signs?
so there was a deep division of opinion among them. Then the Pharisees again questioned the man who had been blind and demanded,
What's your opinion about this man who heals you?
the man replied,
I think he must be a prophet.
the Jewish leaders still refused to believe the man had been blind and could now see, so they called his parents. They asked them,
Is this your son? Was he born blind? If so, how can he see?
his parents replied,
We know this is our son, and he was born blind, but we don't know how he can see or who healed him. Ask him. He is old enough to speak for himself.
His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jewish leaders who had announced that anyone saying Jesus was the Messiah would be expelled from the synagogue. That's why they said, he is old enough, ask him. So for the second time, they called in the man who had been blind and told him,
God should get the glory for this because we know this man, Jesus, is a sinner.
I don't know whether he is a sinner.
the man replied,
But I know this. I was blind and now I can see.
But what did he do?
they asked.
How did he heal you?
Look,
The man exclaimed,
I told you once. Did you listen? Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples too?
then they cursed him and said,
You are his disciples, but we are the disciples of Moses. We know God spoke to Moses. We don't even know where this man comes from.
Why, that's very strange.
man replied,
He healed my eyes, and yet you don't know where he comes from. 31. We know that God doesn't. We know that God doesn't listen to sinners, but he is ready to hear those who worship him and do his will. Ever since the world began, no one has been able to open the eyes of someone who was born blind. If this man were not from God, he couldn't have done it.
You were born a total sinner.
they answered,
Are you trying to teach us?
and they threw him out of the synagogue.
So what happens is that they take him to the Pharisees, and the Pharisees have got their own interpretation of the Bible, and Jesus isn't fitting to it. They say, this is what the Sabbath is, you shouldn't do any work, which is right from the Bible. Jesus agrees with that. But they've got their own interpretation. They say that putting spit and making it into mud is work. I think Jesus disagrees with that. They say that healing somebody on the Sabbath, on the Lord's day, is work. And Jesus might agree with that, but he thinks it's work that's okay on the Sabbath, just as the priests are allowed to do sacrifices on the Sabbath and do all sorts of things on the Sabbath day. So Jesus is able to do things which bring healing on the Sabbath day. And I think there's a problem with some Christians nowadays. They have such rigid views of their own interpretation of Scripture. They come to the Bible and they say, right, this is what it means, and nobody else can be right if they disagree with me. And it causes tremendous disunity and harm. And I think we can learn from this that sometimes we need to be a bit humble in the way that we interpret the Bible. And because the Pharisees weren't, and it brought them into conflict with Jesus. And because of that, They look at what Jesus did and they say, well, he's a Sabbath breaker, he breaks the law, so he must be evil. And they got it completely wrong. Instead of saying, yes, Jesus is doing good, God is backing up his message and everything he does with miracles, instead they say that he is evil. He is doing everything with the power of the devil. And so they reject him. And they get everybody else they possibly can to reject him too. And what they'd really like to do is disprove this miracle, to prove that it never happened. So they call his parents in. And they say, right, is this your son? Was he born blind? And they go, yes. How can he now see? Oh, well, we don't know about that. So you'll have to ask him. So he must have been at least sort of teenager. I think he's probably a little bit older than that, but anyway, because he's called a man all the way through. But if you're 13 or over, then they can pass on the responsibility of answering that to him. And John explains, he says, because the Jews had said anybody who says that Jesus is the Messiah is going to get chucked out of the synagogue. So they bring him back and they ask him various questions. Who do you think he is? Oh, I think he's a prophet. He must be. He's quite cautious to start with. And then he starts showing that he might have been blind, but he definitely wasn't dumb. He is a lot smarter than the Pharisees. God should get the glory for this. We know this man Jesus is a sinner. I don't know whether he's a sinner, the man replied, but I know this. I was blind, but now I can see. And they go, well, what did he do? How did he heal you? And the man gets a bit fed up at this point because he's told them it's not a complicated story, is it? Someone could put mud on my eyes, I washed it off, and now I can see. That's all he can tell them. So he says, I've told you once, but you didn't listen. Do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples? Which makes them a little bit annoyed. We're disciples of Moses. We don't even know where this man came from. And he goes, well, that's very strange, isn't it? He's done some miracle that nobody has ever heard of in the world. And you don't even know where he comes from. You're meant to be the experts. If this man wasn't from God, he could not possibly have done it. Because we know God listens to people who honour him and follow him. And they go, you were born a total sinner. Are you trying to teach us? And they threw him out because they didn't want to listen. All he's got to say is, I was blind, but now I see. And we've all got that to say if we've put our trust in Jesus. Once we were blind, like John Newton who wrote Amazing Grace. I once was blind, but now I see. And it's not because we've been incredibly clever or wise, it's because God has brought sight to blind eyes, our blind eyes, and enabled us to see. And that's the man's kind of testimony. He's just going around telling people, I was blind, but now I see. And we come across all sorts of difficult questions, don't we? The Pharisees are saying, well, how could this possibly have happened? And the man goes, I don't know all that stuff. And a lot of the time we don't know the answers to all the difficult theological questions and everything, but we do know what God has done in our lives. And we can tell other people, I don't know about all that, but I was blind and now I see. Let's just look at the last little section. So for this bit, it's either Debbie or Toby and Ros and Josh, I think.
Spiritual blindness. When Jesus heard what had happened, he found the man and asked,
I think we need Dan as well, sorry.
Do you believe in the Son of Man?
the man answered,
Who is he, sir? I want to believe in him. Yes, the Lord, I believe. Yes, Lord, I believe. No, sorry.
You have seen him,
Jesus said.
and he is speaking to you.
Yes, Lord, I believe.
The man said, and he worshipped Jesus. Then Jesus told him,
I entered this world to render judgment, to give sight to the blind, and to show those who think they see that they are blind.
Some Pharisees who were standing nearby heard him and asked,
Are you saying we're blind?
If you were blind, you wouldn't be guilty,
Jesus replied,
but you remain guilty because you claim you can see.
So, just the last little bit. Jesus goes looking for the man. And quite often, you know, he's been thrown out of the synagogue, he's been healed, but he's kind of left alone, and Jesus comes looking for us, just like in the Good Shepherd story. He comes looking for us. And he's got some words to encourage and comfort this man. And he says, do you believe in the Son of Man? And the man says, I want to believe in him, but I don't know who he is. He doesn't know about it. He needs to hear that good news from Jesus. And Jesus says, I am him. You've seen him. He's speaking to you. And the man says, yes, Lord, I do believe. And he worships him. Now, if you look through the Bible, particularly in the New Testament, when somebody worships somebody, it's got to be God. Otherwise, the disciples or even angels in Revelation, they say, don't worship me. I'm just an ordinary created being. I'm just a servant just like you. But Jesus accepts this man's worship. And this is another outrageous thing that for anybody else it would be completely inappropriate. But Jesus accepts the worship of this man. And then he tells them that he's actually come to bring sight to those who are blind. But actually some people who were pretty arrogant in themselves and they think they know it all, they're actually going to be, it's going to be revealed that they're the blind ones. They think that they know it all, but they don't. Jesus loves to help blind people see, whether they're physically blind or spiritually blind. I was going to have a little thing at the end of this, but I can't see my contributor, so I'm going to stop there and just say a prayer, and then we're going to move into some worship, after which we're going to have communion. Lord Jesus, where we're blind, please help us to see. And Lord, help us to share what you have done in our lives. You've done so many amazing things in so many of our lives. Help us to share that with others and just point to you. Thank you that we can see. Help us to see a bit better than we did before. For your name's sake, Lord Jesus. Amen. Let's worship.